What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Down Once More. This is our second mini episode of the year. It will be a solo one with me. That being said, we're going to mix things up a little bit, even from what we said on both of the previous episodes. I think we're going to move the joint episodes with Rayleigh and I to weeks 2 and 4 of the month. So, the first mini episode, the first episode of 2023, that time frame's been shifted. I also am going to test out some new things on these episodes. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a media focus thing for the beginning. And I'm going to go over some what I've been watching, recommendations, what's streaming. And then I'm going to go over The Last of Us on HBO. Episode 1 premiered last night. I'm recording this Monday morning. I'm going to start doing mini reviews, recaps of those thoughts on the episodes weekly after each episode. So even weeks where there is a joint episode releasing, I will be recording a small mini episode on that and releasing it to our YouTube page. So that will be on the non-mini episode weeks. That'll be a YouTube exclusive. So I will also put time codes in the description of all of these if that's not something you're interested in, care about, or you just want to avoid spoilers, because I will be mentioning some spoilers. Take a look at the time codes in the YouTube video, the description on podcast platforms. Skip ahead. Then I will be talking about some of the differences and my updated thoughts on Moulin Rouge. If you listen to or watch that episode, it was one of the more heated debates Rayleigh and I had on here with our differing opinions on that.
Moulin Rouge.
This one, I haven't had one of these takes in a while. This one might end the podcast.
I'm cute enough to be a sugar baby.
Oh no, I fucking want Timmy. We don't kink shame here.
Yeah, naughty words. Naughty words. I love it.
Awooga.
So many dicks.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of dicks. Like so many dicks. So many dicks.
I might
like
take
so
20%.
Many dicks. Fuck all y'all judgy bitches.
Everything I say is my own ignorant opinion, or like it's not fact.
Shut the fuck up.
Like you can't fucking do that shit.
I wish I could slap you. I don't want to listen to the fighting. Ladies and gentlemen, I think our friendship just ended.
You just don't want us to grow our audience, do you?
And when I say both of us, I mean myself and not Matt's, because Matt's opinion sucks.
On that. So tune into that episode and stay tuned in this episode for my thoughts on kind of the Broadway version versus the musical version. So first off, get into what I have been streaming, what I've been watching lately, and recommendations on that. Now, this was a holiday weekend, a long weekend, and a rare one where I didn't have much of anything going on. So I did a lot of binge watching this weekend. I binge watched the Hulu series The Bear, which takes place at a Chicago beef restaurant. Carmy takes over for his brother Mikey after his brother committed suicide and left him the restaurant in the will. And he's a classically trained top chef, been recognized across the world. And so he is going into this kind of hole in the wall style family restaurant and kind of taking over there. The anxiety with the show is top tier, of a busy kitchen, going through changes, mixing things up, and just trying to adapt to everything. I loved it. I binge watched this. This is gonna kind of sound sad, but I binge watched it in one day. There's 8 episodes, maybe 10 episodes. There's a handful of episodes. They're shorter episodes and really easy watch. Fantastic acting all the way around. Very edge of your seat style writing, even though most of it just takes place in the kitchen and around there. Highly recommend that. On Disney Plus, for my fellow nerds out there, The Bad Batch season 2 has premiered. We just had our 3rd episode this week. It's an animated series, takes place after Star Wars episode 3, between episodes 3 and 4. It's good. It's a solid series. One of my pet peeves and things I dislike in most TV shows and movies are whiny kids, which the series features one, Omega. But aside from that, the animation style is fantastic, and lighting, effects, everything they do with it is great. So if you're a Star Wars fan at all, even though it's a cartoon, still highly recommend it. Season 1, quick binge watch. Season 2, it's on episode 3 now. Those air Wednesdays. I rewatched seasons 1 and 2 of Dave on Hulu, and I've talked about Dave on here before, and it's one of those shows where you can't deny the creativity and kind of uniqueness that Lil Dicky brings, Dave Bird, in this semi-autobiographical, mostly fictitious world, but kind of facing the anxiety, fears he goes through. And I tell you what, there's not another show that I have watched that can make me tear up in one episode when 10 minutes earlier in the episode, there's someone shitting in a lake, and also just balance the emotion of his hype man Gator is bipolar and dealing with that. And that's one of the best episodes of TV I've seen. It's called Hype Man. It's episode 5 of season 1, I believe. And then just some absolute, just absurd moments throughout it that it is both juvenile and mature, and just, it's its own thing. It's something that I have a hard time kind of recommending because it's very specific. It's very weird. It's very over the top, but writing and acting on it are top notch. So, and I started watching Your Honor on Showtime. Got ads for it. It's got Bryan Cranston as a judge whose son accidentally had a hit and run and killed a mob boss's son. And so he's working to kind of cover it up and save his son's life. It's very interesting so far. I'm about halfway through that. I'm done with episode 4 of the series, and season 2 of that, the first episode, just premiered this week. So I've got that to look forward to go into my binge. And then, like I said, last night, The Last of Us premiered. So now I'll get into a little more in depth on The Last of Us. All right. So I'm going to get into the review of episode 1 of The Last of Us now. It's an HBO series. The showrunners are Neil Druckmann, who wrote the game, the PlayStation exclusive game from Naughty Dog, came out in 2013. So Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin are the writers, directors of this series. Episode 1 covered the prologue from the game and the introduction, the first kind of chapters of it, and where we're going from Joel's introduction to Ellie. I'm going to get into some spoilers on here, but I'm going to make it a point not to spoil anything that hasn't happened in the show yet, that's happened in the games. I want you to be able to listen to this and experience those moments for the first time in the show, or if the show made you want to go pick up the game and play through that, experience them for the first time in that. So, that being said, let's dive into it. The first major change from the game to the show is that the show opens in 1968 with 2 scientists on a TV panel discussing viruses, pandemics, and everything like that, which I'm kind of torn on the virus pandemic adjustment. It hits a little bit closer to home now after COVID and dealing with the effects and aftermath of that. And so you see so many TV shows that kind of almost seems like they shoehorn it in. This, it fits with what they're talking about, and on that scale, kind of building the dread that we are going to experience at the core of this story. And we are getting the 2 scientists talking about, the one talks about viral infections, pandemics, how they can spread so quickly, be so dangerous and deadly. The other one talks about the importance and how he thinks the big major fear and danger potentially are fungi, and that the fungi can grow and take over a body and alter how your mind thinks and performs. Like LSD comes from fungi. And he said that's the true danger that we have to face, because that, once that takes over, there's nothing we can do to combat it. There's nothing you can do to prevent it. There's nothing you can do to cure it. It takes over, and that's when humanity loses. And this is where we get kind of the global warming angle, because he says the reason fungi aren't dangerous to humans, the cordyceps or anything like that, at the time, 1968, they can't live above an internal temperature of 94 degrees. Humans obviously above that. And he said they have no reason to evolve. The fungi has no reason to evolve or adapt. But if the Earth's temperature, core temperature, were to change a few degrees, then they would have a reason to evolve. And that kind of sets the stage for the dread and how dangerous this infection can be. We then jump to 2003. We are introduced to Sarah, played by Nico Parker, who absolutely, in my opinion, stole the show. She is in this episode for 30 minutes in this series, and she helps you build such a connection and care about the character of Sarah. In my opinion, even more than the game did, because we spend more time with her, see more of her personality, and I absolutely loved that. It also, this is the next big kind of shift in the show and the game. The show, they shift the timetable earlier by 10 years. The show takes place 2003 is when it starts, and then the 20-year jump is 2023. So it sets it in today, whereas the game is 2013, the year the game was released, and 2033. So in this is the prologue of the game that's playing out, that we're seeing. So the prologue of the game is 16 minutes long. That's including the gameplay, slow walking, which, big criticism about the games, the movement is slow as shit. So sometimes it feels like it's dragging. Like even when you're sprinting, slow as shit. So fair warning for that if you're going to dive into the games. Also play it on the lowest difficulty. It is a difficult game. It is a stealth-based game. Enjoy the story. This is a story-driven game, a story. The narrative is what's key and so special about this. The gameplay is still fun, and it's still a fun to play game, but the story is what really helped it grow to the popularity it has and connect to that many people. And I think that's why this, in my opinion, based off the first episode, we'll see how it finishes out and nails it the rest of the series. But this is the best video game adaptation that we have gotten. And the video game itself is one that sets it up really well for that if it's done right and with the right people, because it is a narrative-driven, story-driven game. And so when you get producers and writers that care about that story, which, hey, we have the games writer doing this too, so obviously very connected and wanting to do justice by the story of the game, they can portray this really well, especially with the budget they're going to get from HBO and the ability to pretty much do whatever they want with it. And Craig Mazin did Chernobyl, which I have not watched yet, hand up. I have heard it is fantastic, and it's on my list. So every faith in them in adapting this. We have, going through then, so what I was saying, the prologue of the game, 16 minutes long. The time we spend in 2003 with Sarah and the other characters there in the series, it takes up the first 30 minutes of the episode. So we're in for a long haul there. We get to build that connection to the characters and kind of see some of their motivations. You see Joel's motivations as a father. Like I said, we're doing full spoilers in here. At the end of the prologue, Joel and Sarah are trying to escape Austin. It starts out in Texas. They're trying to escape, and they're stopped by soldiers, and he gets ordered to shoot them. They can't risk the infection getting out. Joel gets grazed. His watch that Sarah just gave him for his birthday, because it starts on his birthday, gets broken, and Sarah is shot and died. We get a really heartbreaking scene of Sarah dying in Joel's arms, and Nico Parker and Pedro Pascal absolutely nail that in the game. After the episode on HBO, they had a little bit behind the scenes and talking. Nico Parker said she didn't want to rehearse that scene as much because she wanted the emotion and the connection to just play out as they were filming it as much. And you can tell she, like I said, to me, she was the standout and stole the show in this episode. All the performances did really. I was really impressed with the casting on this. They absolutely nailed it. Pedro Pascal embodies Joe so well, and then when we get introduced to Bella Ramsey, they absolutely crushed the portrayal of Ellie. It may not be exactly like the games, but that spirit of the characters is there in all these performances, these roles. So, prologue, awesome. We jump 20 years ahead to 2023. We are introduced to the QZ, the quarantine zone. We see Fedra soldiers. The current timeline opens with a young kid, looks under 10, going into the QZ. Fedra workers kind of not interrogating, because it's more just asking questions. They're asking calmly, asking how old they are, everything like that. End up doing a test, find out the kid's infected. The Fedra soldier is still being very calm, saying, hey, we're going to give you some medicine, want to help you, then we can do your favorite meal. They inject the kid. Then it jumps to a bunch of workers throwing bodies into a burn pit and burning the infected. And that is where we are introduced to present day Joel. And he is there, and his first thing is throwing that kid into the fire. So the last two times we see back-to-back things of Joel are his daughter dying in his arms and then throwing an infected kid that is, it's not completely said they're dead, could just be subdued, but burning them to kill them or destroy the infection. And so that is our introduction to the Boston QZ. Started out in Austin, now we're in Boston. And we get introduced to Joel as a smuggler. He is talking to a Fedra soldier and selling him hydros and for rations, and talking to him. They're talking about a plan to get a car battery, or to get a vehicle, from the soldier, and looping some other people in, and that's what Joel needs him for. And they're negotiating prices, rations, everything like that. And the Fedra soldier tells him to stay off the streets. People are jumpy because of the Fireflies. Fireflies are the rebellion group that's going against Fedra, against the oppression, referred to as a terrorist organization. And so that's our first reference of them. He says they've been active, they've shot people, they've been blowing things up, they're on the streets. We then get introduced to Tess, who is Joel's smuggling partner. We don't know that this time. We later get to pair those two together. She's meeting with Robert, who found out he sold the battery, the car battery they were looking for, to someone else. And she ends up getting taken into federal custody after a bomb goes off, and she is on the street in between a Fedra and Firefly gun battle. We are then introduced to Veronica, played by Bella Ramsey. She is chained up in a room. There's not really an explanation. She's being asked She's being asked a set of kind of cognitive tests. Count down, give your name, hold your hand out. Count down from 1 to 10. We see kind of just the fire in her, the attitude, the fight towards these people, telling them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, fuck you, is her counting to 10. Calling her motherfuckers, going off. You see this anger in her for such a young kid. She's supposed to be, I think, 14 in the series, they said. And then we jump around. We get some more with Joel and Tess, establishing those characters. We see Joel go to a radio operator. We find out he's trying to get in contact with his brother Tommy, who we are introduced to in a prologue. See that he hasn't heard from him in 3 weeks. He's trying to get information from the radio operator, the tower you get information, where's it at? And he tells him it's the Cody Tower in Wyoming, clear across the country because they're in Boston. Joel tells him to show him where it's at. And that's where he's going. That's where he's heading. That's what they're trying to get the car and the battery for, him and Tess, to go track down Tommy. We find out Tess and Joel are a couple, or at least they're sleeping in the same bed together. And you can see that Joel's still kind of haunted by all the things he's seen, he's done through. He's a very kind of life's beat him down, rough around the edges character, which is perfect from the game standpoint as well. So They go to track down Robert, get this battery back, the car battery, and they go through tunnels and they come across an infected person that has grown into the wall with, well, not toadstools, but kind of the fungus and mushroom looking growth around them. They can see from the infection. And one of the other big changes from the games to the show, a big part of the games is anytime they're around the fungus, the infection, indoors, they have to put on gas masks to protect from the spores that are infecting everyone. It seems as though in the show, it's not spores that are infecting people, it's the tendrils from the people who are infected, which I don't know how people originally got infected, if there was one thing with spores that hasn't been revealed yet. But in the prologue, when we see the neighbor, Miss Zadler, that's attacking everyone, she has like fungus tendrils growing out of her mouth that are in the body that she is eating. And it seems to be that that's what are infecting people. Those tendrils, when infected, bite someone, is what infects and turns someone. And so I think that's just probably a production thing. You don't need to worry about audio and miking and constantly putting gas masks on your stars as they're going through. But I'm not sure. That hasn't been addressed yet. That was just kind of my feeling. They go to get the battery and they come across Robert's dead. There's a bunch of dead people in the building they come to, and they come in contact with Marlene, who in the previous scene we established was the leader of the Fireflies. She is talking to Veronica, and tells her that she knows her name is Ellie. The reason she knows that, she is the one who dropped her off as a baby to the Fedra Military School, which is essentially an orphanage for children with no parents. That Marlene was the one who dropped her off there. That's how she knows who she is, and that's why she's kind of trying to take care of her, look out for her. Anyways, jump back now. Marlene encounters Joel and Tess, and Ellie kind of tries to attack Joel because he has a gun pulled on Marlene, and she tries to kind of ambush him from a doorway. He easily counters it, throws her into a wall, holds her at gunpoint. Marlene then negotiates. She's been shot, she's wounded. She negotiates with Tess and Joel for them to smuggle Ellie out of the QZ to a state building to meet other Fireflies, and then they will get a car, battery, weapons, fuel, so that they can go get Tommy, which Joel reveals that the Fireflies are the one that kind of turned Tommy on him, that it's their fault that he's gone. So I'm sure we'll learn more about that as the series goes on. And so we go back. Joel and Ellie are holed up in his apartment while Tess goes to check out the way, and we get some scenes and some dialogue almost straight from the game, kind of just establishing those characters' emotions, their kind of rapport back and forth, Joel kind of being begrudging to everything, Ellie being inquisitive and just trying to figure out things, which is displayed by she finds a Billboard top hits book and finds a code inside it for Bill and Frank, which game players will know who they are, and it sounds like we're going to get to see them as the series goes on, based on the season preview. And 60s hits means there's nothing new. 70s hits means they have new stock available for Joel, and 80s just has a red X to it. Ellie finds out by tricking Joel after he was asleep saying a certain song played that 80s means there is trouble. So then Tess shows up back to escort everyone out there, and Tess, Joel, Ellie go outside of the QZ. We kind of see the naivety of Ellie. She stands up outside. It's just, wow, I can't believe I'm outside, right as a Fedra light almost shines on them. Just still kind of highlighting, oh, this is still a kid that we're dealing with, that we're looking at. She still doesn't know everything that's going on, even though we've seen all that tough exterior and how she's kind of got that fire in her and kind of hardened. They then stumble across the Fedra soldier that Joel sold Hydros to. He says he warned him not to go out. Seems like he's kind of taking almost like a blackmailing them stance, saying it's punishable by death. He wants everything for free now. He wants some of their take. But he says he's still going to scan them, go by the protocol. to see if they're infected. Scans Tess, scans Joel. Well, he scans Ellie. She stabs him in the leg with a knife that she's carrying. And then Joel then stands in front of Ellie to protect her as the soldier pulls his gun on her and tells Joel to stand back. You see, he flashes back to the time with Sarah, and his kind of paternal instinct kicks in, and that rage to protect, and he beats the soldier to death. Ellie almost gets like a bloodlust, a feral look on his face as this goes in. And that the directors kind of said in the showrunners in that after episode feature that you kind of see that kind of almost bloodlust and the difference between Ellie kind of being excited about someone protecting her and that kind of brutality. Whereas when Joel killed the neighbor to protect Sarah in the prologue, she's scared and almost taken aback. So we see that these two might be kind of a dangerous pair with Joel and Ellie. And so as the episode ends, Tess, Joel, and Ellie escape further into the city outside of the QZ. And the song Never Let Me Down Again by Depeche Mode, which I may be mispronouncing that because I've never listened to them, is playing on Joel's radio in his apartment. The shot zooms in there. And so that's from Bill and Frank, and that song was released in 1987. So a little bit of foretelling for where the series is going to go, what we've got going on. And that sums up episode 1. That's the close of that. I thought it was a super strong first episode, maybe the strongest first episode of a series that I have seen ever. And I don't think that's because I'm biased towards the game, because while I really enjoyed the game, it wasn't like one of my favorites. I played through it. Honestly, I kind of did a speed run through it to get to the second one because I was more excited for the second game. And then I'm currently in the middle of doing a replay right now. I'm about halfway through, I think, because I wanted to play it through and get things kind of fresh in my mind to compare it to the series. So that wraps up episode 1. I'm really excited. I thought it was perfectly cast. I'm really excited to see where the series goes. And the intro using the same music from the game players got to be like, oh, that really hits home with them. And those details are things that game players are really going to appreciate. So highly recommend it. Episode 1 is out now, HBO Max. I will be doing mini reviews, typically shorter than this, on the future episodes as we go. So that concludes this wrap up. All right. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about Moulin Rouge. If you watch that episode, Rayleigh and I had some back and forth on that because I said I borderline hated it and she said she loved it. Now, since then, I have watched the movie again, and it did grow on me on a rewatch. And I also started listening to Moulin Rouge Broadway cast recording because it did get turned into a Broadway play a couple years ago. And I have to say, for me, I like the Broadway version significantly more. Now, I have not seen it played out. That's just listening to the soundtrack and the cast recording. One, there's less cultural appropriation with Indian songs and beats, so that's always a plus. 2, it has a lot more modern music, modern feel to it, and a little bit more cohesive tonally. Just soundtrack wise, like I said, I haven't seen it played out. One of the things, so what this is, we talked about when we talked about Moulin Rouge. Moulin Rouge is a jukebox musical, which means it uses songs written from other people and plugs them in the story where they fit and works it into the story, with the exception of Come What May, which was written for the 2001 movie, the Baz Luhrmann movie. So that being said, knowing it's a jukebox musical, a different feel, and I get that movies versus Broadway plays are different feels. There's different things you can do. The Broadway musical samples 54 different songs in it, with covers, arrangements. Some of that's only a line or two in a song, but there's 54 different songs that are pulled into it. The movie only has 19. you can have an argument either way for which one's better. When you're just getting a song here, a song there, there's times of the Broadway musical that almost feel like, if you've watched Pitch Perfect, they do the riff offs where they go back and forth and back and forth. You pick up off a word. There's parts of the new musical that feels like that, which I actually enjoy, but I think that could turn off a lot of people from it too. This is most evident in the Elephant Love Medley song, I feel like, when they're going back and forth and back and forth. The movie version of the song still, it samples a lot. That is the biggest mashup in the movie. It samples 10 songs. So over half the songs that are in the movie come from this one song. Half the songs that are sampled in the movie are in this one song. The Broadway one has 20 songs that they hit. It's also almost twice as long as the movie version, but there are 20 different songs that they sample in this. I really like the Broadway version of this song. I like the beats it has. I love it. It's on one of my regular playlists, not just my musical one. There are 7 shared songs between the two of them, the Broadway and musical version. There's Your Song by Elton John, Heroes by David Bowie, One More Night by Phil Collins, Pride in the Name of Love by U2, Up Where We Belong by Joe Cocker and Jennifer Warnes, All You Need Is Love by the Beatles, and I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. Those are the same. Those are both in Broadway movie. And then another fact I thought was interesting, I did my own research on this, so if it's wrong, I'm sorry, but I did try to double check everything. Out of the 54 songs in the Broadway play, the average year the songs were released was 1988. With the most recent song in there being in 2013. Out of the movie, the average year that the songs were released that were sampled, and that was 1978. So you're getting a lot more new, modern songs in the Broadway version, which I think is why it kind of hit home more with me, and I enjoyed it more. And so those are just some facts that I thought was fun of it. If you are a fan of the movie Moulin Rouge, I highly recommend checking out the Broadway cast recording of Moulin Rouge. Aaron Tveit does a fantastic job. He does sound weird, but he does a fantastic version of Rolling in the Deep in it. And so I highly recommend that. And it's just a fun listen to. A lot of songs from the 2000s in there that kind of brought me back to growing up. And so I highly recommend it. I think it's a lot of fun. Check out that on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere you listen to music. All right. I'm going to wrap up there for this mini episode. Next week, we will be getting our review of Love Never Dies. It is our first movie review of 2023. So make sure to tune into that, subscribe, give us your thoughts on what you think of this. If there's a different show you'd like to see me review, I'm still going to do Last of Us, but give me show recommendations. I like watching things, talking about them, having discourses about them. If anything else you want to discuss, if you have feedback on the way that's presented, I know I rambled way more than I had planned on that and repeated myself a decent amount. So I know I still need to hone things down. I know I still have things to work on here. But as always, appreciate everyone for listening, watching, tuning in. Don't forget to go down once more, and we will see you next time.